Hello, everyone. This is Dorie Clark, and we are here with our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. And today we are talking with Laura Vanderkam. She's a productivity expert. She's the author of the new book. It's called Tranquility by Tuesday. And we're going to be talking about how to make time for what matters most, which is especially relevant as we enter the holiday season. The beginning of the new year is nearly upon us, and a lot of us are taking stock of our priorities and trying to figure out how we should potentially recalibrate our time. And Laura is going to fill us in. Laura Vanderkam, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It is great to have you. And for those of you who are tuning in from around the world, please type into the chat box and let us know who you are and where you are dialing in from. And also any questions you have for Laura Vanderkam about productivity, about time management, about how to optimize for what matters most. So, Laura, I know we're here to talk about Tranquility by Tuesday, but I want to start with one of my I am a longtime Laura Vanderkam reader and fan. I've mentioned you in multiple of my books. So I want to start with what I think is one of your more interesting contentions. You propounded in a lot of your books, although perhaps most notably your previous one, 168 Hours. And one of the things that you've talked about a lot is that oftentimes we seem to have a kind of erroneous understanding of how much time we're actually working. People say, I'm busy. Oh my God, I'm working 100 hours a week. And you've discovered it turns out that that's not always the case. Can you tell us what is up and what you have in fact discovered?
Yeah, well, a major problem. Most people don't know how much time they have in general. One of the things I always tell people, there are 168 hours in a week, right? There are 24 times 7, that's 168. We say 24/7. People don't multiply it through. But the problem is, if you don't know how much time there is in kind of this normal unit of life that keeps repeating, it's pretty hard to know what proportion you spend on different things. And work is something we tend to spend a lot of time on. But in many cases, not all of it is blissful. Hopefully, it is for all your viewers here. But if it isn't, it is easy to overestimate the things that we don't want to do and underestimate the things that we do want to do. So people tend to overestimate how many hours they work, how many hours they spend on housework. That's another one. People tend to underestimate how much time they have for leisure in particular. You know, people will tell you I have absolutely no free time whatsoever, and you could be having this conversation at a party or something. It's like, well, maybe just a tiny bit, right? But we have these stories that we tell ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with this per se. I mean, I'm not here to play gotcha, like, oh, you thought you were working 45 hours a week and you're working 40. Like, nobody really cares, right? But the point is, if you want to spend certain proportions on different things, like I want to spend this amount of time on working and on developing my team, this amount of time on planning and prospecting, this amount on administration. If you don't know the denominator, it's hard to choose the numerator. So we want to make sure we're working from good data. If you get paid by the hour, you know how many hours you're working. If you don't, it's a good idea to keep track of it so you get a good sense of it.
I love that. Such a great point. We're here with Laura Vanderkam. I'm Dorie Clark, interviewing her for Newsweek's interview show Better. And Laura is the author of the new book, Tranquility by Tuesday. And we want to say hi to some of our great friends who are tuning in from around the world. Thank you for being here. We've got Diana in Portugal. Lillian is in New York City. Cheryl's in brutally cold Minneapolis. Oh, that sounds a little sad. Sorry, Cheryl. Jennifer's in New York. We've got Hafiz in Dubai. Charles is here from Chile. Paulina is on vacation. Well, I am happy for you, Paulina. Allison is in Toronto and Tamara is in Utah. We love having every single one of you here. And so, Laura, a question that I have for you. In Tranquility by Tuesday, you talk about a concept that you have that I think is really interesting. You talk about the difference between having effortful fun as opposed to effortless activities. Why should fun be effortful? What do you mean by this? And what do we get out of it?
Well, it still needs to be fun, right? But if you think about it, there are different kinds of leisure activities that we spend our time on. There are things like reading or hobbies, crafts, or connecting with friends. And these are all very fun activities, but they require a little bit of planning, a little bit of coordination, maybe a little bit of effort, if you will. Then there are those sorts of leisure that are a bit more passive. So things like watching Netflix or scrolling around online, being on social media, that sort of thing. And those tend to be, lower effort activities. They're a lot easier to do. And because of this, we tend to spend the bulk of our leisure time on effortless fun. And there's nothing wrong with effortless fun. It has its place, but many people in the abstract, at least, say they would like to spend more time on reading and hobbies and connecting with friends. But the effortless sorts of fun tend to crowd these things out because we only have a limited amount of discretionary time, especially if you are working full time, raising a family, involved in your community. There's sort of not oodles of time. And so you want to make sure that the balance is appropriate to make you feel most rejuvenated. So one of the Tranquility by Tuesday rules, which there are 9 rules in this book that I think are pretty universally applicable, can help you spend your time better. One of them is to do effortful fun before effortless fun, and do just a few minutes of more effortful leisure activities like reading or hobbies before you switch to the screens. It doesn't have to be a lot. If you pick up your phone, read an ebook for 2-3 minutes before you go start scrolling around on Instagram. If you have put your kids to bed or you're finished with your chores or your work, do a puzzle for 10 minutes before turning on Netflix. And what this does is it just changes the balance. Sometimes people get so into their effortful fun that they just keep going. I mean, you're so excited about what happens in that mystery novel that you never wind up at Facebook, and that's totally fine. But even if you do wind up switching to the passive variety of leisure, at least you'll get both. And when people did this, they tended to feel like they were wasting a ton less time. Even busy people whose lives don't suggest a whole lot of wasted time in the first place.
Yeah, that's really an important point. I know one of the things, Laura, that you are famous for, at least famous to me for, although I think famous in general, is time tracking. And Laura really encourages people. And in fact, you all who are tuning in, if you go to Laura's website, lauravanderkam.com, you can download a free tool that she has for time tracking, sort of spreadsheet that she's set up, which I have personally done, and I have written about it. But one of the things that I discovered in my own time tracking is that in general, I'm not someone who's incredibly susceptible to going down social media rabbit holes, but apparently what I discovered is that my social media usage, this was a few years ago, was almost always confined to between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. And what I realized was like, okay, this is where the willpower reserves have dwindled, and I was too awake to go to sleep, but too tired to do anything productive. And I would just be like, I guess I'll see what's on social media. And once I realized that pattern, thanks to the time tracking that you recommended, I was able to stop it.
Yeah, I recommend time tracking for anyone. I mean, it's the same thing if people are trying to eat more healthfully or if people are trying to get control of their finances. I mean, these are all things that can be tracked. But I think we tend to be even less aware of where our time goes than maybe where our money goes. So it's helpful to just try keeping track of it, get the data, because, people say they want to spend their time better. But if you don't know where your time is going now, it is very hard to figure out if you're changing the right thing. I mean, you had not necessarily identified that this was a time of day where you could do something like read if you wanted to, right? Or if, had puzzles or whatever it is you wanted to do, something that might be a little bit more relaxing, or go to bed earlier and get that time in the morning, wake up earlier and do something else completely with the time. But unless you are tracking your time, you're just not going to be aware of it. I promise it's not that onerous. Do it for 1 week. You will start to see patterns in your life. You'll see where there is time that you are spending on things that maybe you don't care about so much. And maybe you can redeploy that time to something that would be more fun, more meaningful for you and the people you care about.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And I have done it multiple times and found it very helpful each time. And if you are enjoying this conversation, hit the like and hit the share button so that your friends can benefit from it as well. This is Dorie Clark. I'm here with our Newsweek weekly interview show, Better. And our guest is Laura Vanderkam. Her new book is Tranquility by Tuesday. And type your questions for her into the chat box. A great one, Laura, that has come in is from Lisa. And Lisa says, time's an illusion, right? It's very metaphysical, Lisa. Here we go. The fiction of time creates stress, but it's also what drives what we call productivity. So how can we stay present and still feel productive? And yes, just be dealing with this existential morass.
The existential question. Yes, well, time may be a construct, but somebody still needs to pick up my kids at 3:30 today. So it's a very useful construct in terms of how we deal with our lives and our responsibilities and things like that. So I think, with anything, it's a balance, right? And there's no reason to make ourselves feel guilty over what we are or are not doing in some grand scheme of things. There's more things in life than we could ever do, right? You do not start your day in a productivity debt that you then have to struggle to work off. Instead, I choose to view it that we are here, we are existing. That is wonderful. If we make progress on things that we find important, that is great. And we can celebrate those things, right? So that is how I choose to view it. You're not starting from behind and trying to get to zero. You're starting at a baseline, and anything beyond life maintenance is great. And that's a good way to think about productivity.
Really excellent point. We're here with Laura Vanderkam, author of Tranquility by Tuesday. We want to say hi to some of our great friends tuning in from around the world. If you're just joining, let us know who you are and where you're dialing in from. Patricia is in Boston. Vajita is in Toronto. We've got Kristen in Philly. Jillian's in Toronto too. Francis is in Bogota. Ravi's joining from Hyderabad. We've got a LinkedIn friend from Istanbul. Our buddy Bernard is from Munich. We have Anand from India. Sumit is from Bengaluru. Stephanie is from Toronto. Wow, Canada is really doing a good job today. Props to you, nation of Canada. That's amazing. And Rebecca is in Chicagoland. We love having all of you here. Now, Laura, a question that I'm wondering about is I love this quote here. You have said, ask yourself what is important, not just what is happening. Can you explicate this for us? What do you mean by that?
One of the Tranquility by Tuesday rules, one of these 9 time management rules that I think will help people make their lives better, is to plan on Fridays. And what I mean by this is that everyone needs a designated weekly planning time where you look forward to the upcoming week and you work through your schedule, you figure out what's going on, of course, that is part of planning. But that's where most people stop, right? That we're saying, okay, well, these are the things I have to do over the next week, or these are the things I am doing, whatever is on our calendars. Ask also not just what is happening, but what is important to you. Like if this was a really good week, what would you do? What would you experience over the next week? How would you end the week? And looking back, what would you say, had happened? And by doing that, you can kind of identify what matters to you over the next week. And if what is happening has no relationship to what is important, that is a good sign that maybe you need to do some work to change things around and to schedule in some things that are important to you. And maybe it overlaps perfectly, and that's wonderful, in which case, you've got an awesome schedule. Most people, it's somewhere in the middle, right? There are some things that are important that are happening over the next week. There are some things we don't care about. But, by being aware of this and asking ourselves what is good and important over the next week, we keep our eyes on our priorities and making sure that we are making progress toward our goals instead of just being like, okay, I have this amount of meetings. Well, what's the purpose of those? What is happening? What is important of what is happening? And keeping the right balance between the two.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. The book is Tranquility by Tuesday. I'm Dorie Clark. I'm here for Newsweek interviewing Laura Vanderkam. And we want to say hi to our amazing friends here. Kokila is in Sri Lanka. Amy's in Charlotte, North Carolina. Holly's in Boston. Sean is in New York City. Ahmed is in Germany. Lisa's in Charlottesville. Annette's in Southern California. Adnan is in Turkey. And we've got a LinkedIn friend from the horse capital of the world, Lexington, Kentucky. We're very glad to have all of you. If you're enjoying the conversation, you want to make sure you never miss one, you can just go to dorieclark.com. You can sign up, get a free self-assessment, and you will join the email list. So you'll get reminders for things like this. And if you want to find out more about Laura, it's lauravanderkam.com. So Laura, a great question came in from our pal, Todd Churches, former guest on Better, Todd Churches, author of Visual Leadership. Todd wants to know, when you work for yourself, it's easy to think about work all the time. So it feels like you're always working. How do you turn our brains off? Laura, what do you think?
There's a couple of things you can do. I mean, one, by asking yourself what is important in any given day, any given week, and making yourself that task list. When you cross those things off, you've done them, you can be like, hey, I had a good day, or I had a good week. And that can give you a little bit of permission to relax. You've done the most important things, whatever else there may be in the universe to do. But I think one of the best ways to take your mind off work is to have a really cool personal life. to have a lot of stuff that is going on in your personal life, whether that's friends and family members that you see a lot and do cool things with, whether it's hobbies, community involvement. But if you are going to go play on your softball team on Tuesday nights at 6:30, you're probably not thinking of work at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday because you're making sure that you're advancing the batter around the bases, right? I mean, you just can't really think about it that much when you're doing other things. And obviously, we can't fill all our time, but even some of our downtime, like you're reading a great murder mystery novel, you're probably not thinking about work. So the more we can spend our non-working time on things that are engaging and that allow our brains to go to other places, I think we can reduce a lot of that stress.
Yeah, that's a great point, Laura. Thank you. Diana is tuning in from Bogota. We've got Kaushik from India. We have Kathy in Cleveland. We have Vanessa in the Netherlands, and Elpida is from Greece. We've got Mahmoud from Egypt, and Sam from Israel, and Sushma's in India. We love having all of you. And Laura, so many great questions are pouring in. Everyone is super interested in these productivity topics. And so one that I really like here is Paulina wants to know, how do you plan when you are a rebel or an auto sabotager? How do you deal with this if just inherently in your personality you have some problems with this whole situation?
Well, it's good to know yourself, right? And you need to work around that, because no doubt there are still things that you would like to do in your life. I know a lot of people who are in this sort of rebel category, that Gretchen Rubin has talked about 4 tendencies, with people are obligers or upholders or rebels who don't even want to follow their own dictates. It often helps to think of your identity. So it's not that I have to go for a run. Well, I don't have to do anything. I don't want to. I'd be like, no, I'm a runner and people like me run. And so I'm going to run. This part of my identity. Sometimes that can be helpful. I think it also helps to leave yourself some choice. So maybe you don't strictly plan the day, but you have whatever your meetings are that you need to go to, those sorts of things. But then you have 3 tasks that you have assigned yourself in addition to that. And you can pick and choose. So if you got an hour open in the morning, you look at those list of 3 and say, well, which one do I feel like working on right now? Let me do that. And maybe even have some bonus tasks for later in the week that if you're feeling especially rebellious, you're like, I'm not going to do any of those 3 things today. I'm going to pull from another day. and then you do. And yeah, you're still getting stuff done because it's, it was stuff that was going to need to get done eventually, even if it didn't need to at that moment. But as much as you can leave yourself some choice in the moment, that can get around some of those rebel tendencies that nobody's telling you what to do right now. You are doing what you wish to, but you have structured your life such that you know what is important and you can choose from that list of predetermined things based on what you feel like in the moment.
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like half the battle is just tricking ourselves in life. So that sounds very good. Laura Vanderkam is here. Her new book is Tranquility. By Tuesday, if you want to learn about her, you can go to her website. It is lauravanderkam.com. And some wonderful questions are coming in. Laura, another one that I think is great from Annette in Southern California. She wants to know, how often do you assess your time usage and effort, as well as enjoyment and progress? So you're collecting data, maybe you're tracking your time. How often should you actually be reflecting and making changes as a result of that?
So I'm probably a little different from most people in that, this is my life, right? I write about time. I've been tracking my time for almost 8 years now continuously. And I, in fact, reflect on it every week. So I end my time logs. They start Monday at 5 a.m. and go Monday to 4:30 a.m. So Monday morning, as I have ended my last time log, I reflect on it before I open the new one. I look back over the week. I see, what did I do? What was important over the last week? Did I make progress on my goals? I, in fact, look at it through the lens of the 9 Tranquility by Tuesday rules. Did I follow these rules over the last week? And if I didn't, why not? Was there a good reason? Or, often life is better when I do. So let me reflect on that and see if I need to make any changes. I think for most people, tracking time maybe twice a year or so is a good idea. I'm running a time tracking challenge in January where I am having thousands of people will be tracking their time between January 9th and January 15th. So if you'd like to play along, come to my website. You can sign up and you'll get daily motivational emails from me at lauravanderkam.com. I promise it'll be fun. Or if not fun, at least it'll be useful. And, so that's a good way to get started, right? And then if you have any sort of major life change, if you switch jobs and now the hours you are working are entirely different, or your commute is entirely different, or you moved, or your kids started different schools, or anything that happens like this that can change up your schedule a lot, it is helpful to see where your time is going and reflect on it and see if there are changes you need to make, or if new things are going great that you want to celebrate. These are all sorts of things that can come out of the experience of time tracking. But a couple times a year should be good.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Our guest, I'm Dorie Clark. Our guest is Laura Vanderkam. We want to say hi to our amazing friends tuning in from around the world. Cynthia is in Hollywood, California. We've got Karen in Jupiter, Florida. We've got Carlos tuning in from Colombia. We have Andrew Cronin, my former employee, Andrew Cronin, checking in from Norfolk, Virginia.
Hi, Andrew.
Yeah, hello. We've got Alicia joining from the Bay Area. All kinds of great friends, and we're glad to have all of you. A question that I really like comes in, Laura, from former guest and career author Damon Brown. He says, he's props to you on your work. And he says, I have little kids, so I have to have natural boundaries. But how do people who have too much time find motivation or structure? Certainly, all of us have probably experienced this sort of summer break phenomenon, right? If someone is, maybe they're a little underemployed, they lost their job, maybe they are retired, they work part-time, whatever. If you feel like you have too much time, how can you actually structure things effectively, Laura?
So I had a great conversation with an old friend at a party recently, and she had retired over the past year. And she said that she had gotten some advice that she found most helpful in this situation, which is that she should aim to do one thing a day. Now, I don't mean one thing like take a shower. I mean, although if there's certain periods of life where if that's all you can get through in the day, that's wonderful, and we should pat ourselves on the back for that. But if, in periods where maybe all our time isn't as much spoken for, aiming to do one thing that matters to you each day does a couple good things. I mean, one, it makes you think about the day and set an intention so the day doesn't completely get away from you. But on the other hand, when that's done, you don't need to worry about anything else, right? Whatever you feel like in the moment, you can relax instead of feeling like, well, there's things I should be doing, or I have all this time, but I'm not doing anything and I feel terrible about it. Because you don't want to feel that way. Like if you've been given this gift of having some open time, if you're between jobs, you're going to be really busy soon enough, right? You're going to be doing something else and you won't have this time. So you want to experience it and enjoy it now. There's even periods of retirement where people are busier or less busy. And so maybe you've been working for 40 years. You want to, enjoy this period. But having that mental model of doing one thing a day gives you intentions, means you're getting out of bed, means you are making plans, but also gives you permission to enjoy this space that can feel really like, time is abundant. Sometimes people are really experiencing that for the first time.
Yeah, that's a really useful tip. Thank you, Laura. That's great. We're here with author Laura Vanderkam. Her book is Tranquility by Tuesday, and the great questions are pouring in. Laura, a question came in from Elias. He says, I never complete my workday plan. How can I actually accomplish my goals here? I'm sure a lot of people can relate. We have, ambitious intentions at the start of the day, at the start of the week, but it just doesn't seem to get done. What should we be doing in that situation?
Yeah, my guess is that Elias is setting incredibly ambitious goals for himself for the week or for any given day. And that sounds like a great thing, but it can really be challenging because life happens. Stuff comes up. We never know at the start of the day absolutely everything that we will have needed to have done by the end of it, or we don't know by the end of the week, what we will have needed to do because emergencies arise, stuff comes up, bad stuff, good stuff, probably a little bit of both because that is life, right? And so you want to make sure that your intentions are fairly limited. And I like to think of my to-do list for any given day as something of a contract with myself. Like these are the things that I'm saying, even if everything goes crazy, there are disasters left and right, these are the things I still want to have gotten to by the end of the day. And the only way to make sure that will happen is to keep that list incredibly short. So we're talking like 3 to 5 things other than whatever meetings you need to go to in the course of the day. If it's a really busy day, maybe less than 3. But this forces a couple of things. I mean, first, it forces you to prioritize. If you've got 50 things on your to-do list, you will not get to 50 things. You'll get to some of them, but which ones, right? Maybe it's just the easiest things. Maybe it's the things that were screaming loudest. I don't know. But it's probably not the things that absolutely had to happen. Whereas if you keep a very limited list, you're going to force yourself to figure that out. If you finish your list and you've got more time, like, great, go find some other stuff. Like, I'm sure you've got plenty of things you can tackle. So it's not like you're going to be twiddling your thumbs, but we want to focus on what's most important to happen, because the truth is there's no virtue in putting something on a to-do list and then not doing it. Like, it's as if it was never on the list in the first place. Only now you feel bad about it too. So we really have the worst of all possible worlds, that it didn't get done and you feel bad versus it just not getting done, right? So better to create a situation where at least we are doing what we set out to do. And that means keeping our ambitions much more limited.
So good. That's great. Laura Vanderkam, author of Tranquility by Tuesday. This is Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. And I'm Dorie Clark. And a question came in, Laura, that I feel like you are uniquely suited to answer because unlike me and my cats, who are non-compliant but can be put in carriers, Laura has human children. She has 5 human children. So there's a lot going on in her household. And so Andrew wants to know, Laura, suggestions for not placing your own productivity timelines on other people in your home who don't necessarily share your productivity goals or needs. How do we balance this with other humans who happen to have opinions?
Yeah, well, this is another good reason to keep our ambitions for any given day limited. And especially times when you are going to be primarily responsible for the other people in your life. I mean, so obviously if you're reporting to your workplace and you have childcare for the day, that's a different matter. You can sort of set different priorities than if we're talking, if you have a day when you are more responsible for them, like a weekend or a non-work day or something like that. I try to set very limited goals. I'll give myself, I said this weekend, what is like 2 things other than dealing with the kids that I want to get done. And maybe it's unpack a single box from the move, or, wash something that's not in the normal washing schedule, right? It's just, we're talking very limited ambitions. But if they are limited, they tend to happen. Whereas if they are huge, they tend not to happen. But just in general, I think what this question is probably getting at is we never want to be the person where like, no, don't come talk to me, child. I have 10 things on my to-do list I need to do right now. Like, so you'll just have to talk to me at another time about your hopes and fears and dreams and all that. So I think it helps to always remember this phrase, which is that people are a good use of time. So yes, we have things we want to get done. And yes, children and partners and all that need to learn to respect certain boundaries. I mean, you're probably working to put a roof over their heads. Like you do need to get some certain things done, but that we also are focusing on our relationships with them as one of our top priorities. And so time spent nurturing that relationship is not a detriment to our productivity. It's actually in service of our most important goals. So I think keeping repeating that phrase in our brains when these interruptions happen is that, no, this is a chance to make progress on one of my big goals, right? Because people are a good use of time.
That's fantastic. Thank you. We probably have time for one more question. So many have been pouring in, and there's such smart, great questions. I wish we had time for them all. But I want to turn to Cheryl in brutally cold Minnesota, because she deserves something to warm her heart for after dealing with those temperatures. And she wants to know, Laura, is there a tranquility principle that you personally find challenging? And if so, what helps you keep that important promise to yourself? How and in what way have you struggled to accomplish these things?
Yeah, that's a great question, Cheryl. So rule number 1 is to give yourself a bedtime. And I think this is one that I constantly struggle with, as I think many people do, because when you get to the end of the day, this is time that you now have for yourself, right? Like everything else has been done. Your work has been done. Kids, if you have them, are down. It's like, okay, now I can do what I wish to. And it's like you then have to exercise the self-control to go to bed at that time, to declare the day done when you now finally have this autonomy and freedom. So couple things to do is, one, I try to make sure that I have time for myself at other points in my schedule. And one of the reasons I do make space for my hobbies and my interests is that I don't want to feel like this time late at night is the only space I have for myself. Because then you just start feeling very resentful and you wind up sleep deprived and it just doesn't go well. And just also trying to set myself a moment of truth, right? Which is that my bedtime during the week is 11 p.m. because I need to wake up at 6:30 a.m. for getting my kids out the door. 7.5 hours of sleep. It's just a math problem. If I have to be up at 6:30 and I need 7.5 hours of sleep, 11 is my bedtime. So I have a moment of truth around 10:30. Am I going to bed at 11 or am I not? And I don't have to. Like, I'm a big girl. I can stay up if I would like to. If I'm doing something good, if I'm doing something really important, having a great time, then yes, I don't have to get 7.5 hours of sleep every night. I can do fine on 7 and try and make it up somewhere else. But if I'm not doing anything of any note, I'm just, reading people's arguments on Twitter or something, like that's a good nudge to say, no, go to bed and you'll feel better in the morning and you will very, very proud that you stuck with it. It's challenging. I have this conversation with myself every night, but a bedtime is a good thing.
Bedtime is a great thing. I recently got an Aura ring and it sends notifications to my smartphone and it actually tells me at a certain time. It gives me a little messaging nudge and says, you should start thinking about getting ready for bed now. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, it's making helpful suggestions. It's always very polite and respectful about it, which I appreciate.
Nice.
It doesn't shame you. It's just like, you could consider
Why are you still up, Dorie?
That's right. This has been fantastic. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we have been here with Laura Vanderkam. Her book, you should get it. It is Tranquility by Tuesday. And if you want to learn more about Laura, check out her work, check out her oeuvre, because she has many other books. If you've already read Tranquility by Tuesday, you can get a different one. Go to lauravanderkam.com. And we are here every week, every Thursday, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, 5 o'clock in London. Laura Vanderkam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Dorie. Great to be here.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. We will be here next week. We'll see you on the 29th. And thanks to everyone. Take care.